Hey, what's up everyone? Bill Lethman here for Money Evolution. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about buying versus leasing a car. So here on the channel, we talk a lot about what I call the 4 big expenses. Well, your transportation expenses are certainly one of those. Well, how big of an expense? Well, according to NerdWallet, the average monthly car payment is now over $530 a month, and the average monthly lease payment on a car is now over $430 a month. So that can certainly be a big expense for your family's budget, especially when you start factoring in the gas for the car, the insurance, and the maintenance that you might have to do to keep that car up and running. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down a pretty detailed discussion about buying a car versus leasing a car. Maybe by the end of this, you'll have a little bit more information that you can decide whether buying or leasing is right for you. So before I get into the details, I wanted to share with you one quick thing, kind of a little bit of a mini teaser here. So in doing some of the research for the video here today, I just typed in Ford F-150 lease deals. And the Ford F-150, if you don't know, it is the #1 selling car or truck in the United States right now. And I came across an ad here that says 2019 Ford F-150 Super Crew XLT lease from $149 a month for 24 months. And I said, wow, that seems like a phenomenal deal. So I clicked on that ad. I went to one of our local dealerships websites here in Michigan, and to give you a little bit of a spoiler here, I could not find a lease on 3 pages of trucks that were listed on the site for under $392 a month. So towards the end of this video, I'm going to break this down. I'm going to show you some of the fine print, some of the things that you might want to look out for if you're going forward with a lease deal. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about some of the differences between buying versus leasing a car. So if you're making a purchase, in my opinion, it tends to be a little bit more simple and straightforward. So you're going to negotiate the price with the dealership if that's where you're buying the car from, and you're going to make sure that you're getting all of the discounts that you qualify for. So here in Michigan, we have a lot of automotive employees, and we have a lot of employee discounts floating around. So you want to make sure that you're getting that. I know some car companies offer military discounts, so just make sure you ask about what discounts that you might qualify for. So once you've negotiated that final price, then chances are you're probably going to have to pay some sales taxes. So one of the big differences between buying versus leasing a car is that when you buy, you're going to have to pay the sales tax on the entire purchase price of that vehicle. Whereas when you lease a car, you're going to have to pay the sales tax on just the lease payments themselves. So that could be a very big difference, and that could be one of the reasons for choosing one over the other. So here in Michigan, we have a 6% sales tax. So if you're buying a $30,000 car, you're going to have to pay $1,800 in sales taxes when you go to register that vehicle or when you walk out with that vehicle. Certain states, I know like Montana doesn't have any sales tax there at all, so it varies, and it could vary a lot from one state to another. So another couple things about buying versus leasing. So a few differences. Number one is when you buy a car, you generally have a few less restrictions when you own that car. So for one, mileage. So you can drive that car as much as you want, and that's one of the big differences again of buying a car versus leasing a car, where we'll talk about it when we start getting into leases, but leases are going to be a lot more restrictive on how many miles you can put on the car. But you also have a little bit more responsibility there as well. So when you own a car, you're going to generally be responsible for all of the maintenance on that car, so oil changes, when you need to do tires and brakes and things like that. Now, hopefully, if you're buying especially a new car, you're going to have a warranty, so you're going to want to make sure that you understand what that warranty is and what it covers and how long that warranty is going to last for. In fact, actually, some used cars, one of the things I like to do personally is I like to buy slightly used cars, that are maybe 2 or 3 years old, that are in that lower mileage range, but I like to buy them with a factory certified warranty, and those can vary too from one car company or one deal to another there, but you want to understand what that warranty is. So another thing that I like about owning a car versus leasing a car is that you're a lot more flexible as to when you're going to turn that vehicle back in or when you're going to sell the vehicle. So when you have a lease, for example, if you have a 2-year lease and your lease is up in May, you're going to have to turn that car back in May, and that may not necessarily be the most convenient time in your life to have to go back and turn a car in and have to go out and shop for a new one. So when you own a car, you can go and turn that car back in on your own terms. Now, you're not really turning it back in, you actually have to sell it. So that's one of the negatives of owning a car, is what do you do with the car when you're done with it? You're either going to have to sell that to somebody else that wants to buy your car, or you're going to have to trade the car in, and that can be a little bit of a hassle there as well to make sure that you're getting a good deal when you go to sell the car. So the last thing I want to talk about here as it pertains to owning a vehicle versus a lease on a vehicle is what happens to the depreciation. So I think most of us probably understand that our cars become less valuable every year that we drive those cars. In fact, according to Carfax, the average vehicle loses about 20% of its value over the first 12 months of owning that car. And then over the next 4 years, we continue to lose about 10% a year. So just in those first 2 years, you're already losing about 30% of its value. And that's going to be a big difference on how your value of your car is going to be determined versus what we're going to see on a lease, where the actual lease payment is going to be determined by how much of that car is going to be depreciated every year. Okay, so now let's dive into leasing a vehicle. So one of the big advantages, I think, of leasing a car versus owning a car is, generally speaking, and not always, but you're generally going to have a lower payment for, let's say, the exact same car by leasing it versus owning the car outright. And I say most of the time. That's not always the case, and you certainly want to look into this for the vehicle that you're searching for there. But there are going to be some restrictions on leases, and that's one of the things I really want to kind of hit home here on this. Number one is going to be the mileage. So most often, and we're going to talk, remember, about that lease deal that I found on the Ford F-150 and kind of dive into some of the details. But most of the time when you're looking at a lease deal, it's going to be quoted for one of these low mileage leases. Generally, that's going to be like 10,000 miles a year. Sometimes you might have a lease deal at 12,000 miles or 15,000. Those tend to be the most common. And then oftentimes you're allowed to purchase extra miles. Now, I say this because, if you go over mileage on those leases, they can charge you anywhere from maybe 20 cents a mile up to, I think, I've seen as high as 30 or 35 cents per mile if you go over on that. So one of the advantages, if you're pretty sure that you're going to go over on the mileage, is to buy those miles in advance, and they might sell them to you a little bit cheaper, maybe 15 or 20 cents per mile. So that's one thing to look out for, but mileage restriction is certainly going to be one of those big factors there. The other thing, one of the big advantages of leasing a car, and we've done both in our family. I've owned a couple cars, I've leased several cars. It just depends on what is out there, what kind of deals we can find, and what our purpose is for that particular car. But my wife, as an example, really likes the lease deals because she likes knowing that her car is going to be always under warranty for the entirety of that particular lease. And you don't have to worry about things breaking down. Well, things still can break, but at least you can take them to the dealership and they're going to fix them for you there. So that's one of the basic things with a lease. Also, too, generally, depending on how long your lease is, you're not going to have to maybe replace tires or brakes and things like that. That would be a normal wear and tear item if you were to own the car outright there. So two last points when it comes to leasing a car. So number one, I kind of talked about this when we were talking about the purchase side of owning a car, is that when you're done with it, the nice thing about having a lease is that you just drive it up to the dealership and you turn it in. You don't have to worry about selling it or what kind of value it has. And the car company itself is going to really be taking the responsibility for how much depreciation that car is going to have. So remember, your lease payments are going to be determined by how much that car company thinks that the value of that car is going to drop over the duration of your lease. But if they're wrong with that, let's say the car depreciated a whole lot more, that's not your problem, that's the car company's problem. So the nice thing about a lease is that you just go drive it up to the dealership, you hand off your keys. They're probably going to try to get you into a new lease there, but you're going to basically have no hassle with returning that vehicle there. And then the last thing I want to talk about here are what I refer to as cheap lease deals. And I've done it myself. I know a lot of people that have been able to kind of search the deals and find these ridiculously low car payments there. And so I did this probably a couple years out of college. I leased a Dodge Dakota, and I think my whole entire payment was $685, not per month, but it was $685 for an entire 12-month duration, and that was it. I just wrote a check for $685, and I drove a truck for 12 months. And I did that, probably not quite that good of a deal, but I did several of those every year as I would turn those in, and it was a great deal. So, and I've had clients that have gotten lease deals as cheap as like $57 a month for a pretty decent car. I don't remember what it was. It was a Buick something or other. But anyway, but there's some good deals out there. So check out those cheap lease deals. If you look a lot, you might be able to find those. Okay, so now let's dive into that lease deal that I talked about at the beginning of the video for the 2019 Ford F-150 Super Crew XLT for $149 a month. So like I said, I actually clicked on that ad. I went to the dealership's website. website here, one of the local dealerships here in Metro Detroit, and I actually found that on 3 pages of trucks that they had listed there, the cheapest lease deal that I could find was $392 a month. So I thought I'd point out just a couple of things. First of all, some of the fine print. Okay, so when you kind of dive in there, the fine print says, this is for a 10,500 mile lease. It applies only to people that have a credit score above 720, and that there's a $645 acquisition fee, $4,400 due at signing. I guess that acquisition fee is included with that, but it's going to give you the details on all of the other things that are going on with that. One thing I didn't talk about is sometimes dealerships will charge a disposition fee. So in addition to the money up front on a lease, you may also have to pay a fee just to turn the car back in. So you want to make sure that you understand what all of that fine print is on there. So this is how I like to break down a lease deal here. So when you see a lease and it says, hey, that looks like a great deal, let's even just use the example here of $392 a month for the cheapest one that I found on the website there. A lot of people start becoming focused on just the payment itself, and they don't really fully incorporate the cost of the down payment or the acquisition fee or the money out of pocket to get that lease. So first of all, again, this car has $4,410 that's due right off the bat. $392 of it is your first month's payment. So we're going to kind of back that number out, and it's going to be $4,018 is actually truly kind of like your down payment on the lease. This was for a 36-month lease, and so what we're going to do there is we're going to divide that out-of-pocket cash up front by 36, and that comes out to be $111. So what that does is now that when it gets added to the $392 brings the effective cost of that lease up to $503 a month. So that's something that I want to really point out, because I know I've done it. I've gone into a dealership and they are probably trained to kind of focus on the payment. How much payment can you afford? Well, we can get that payment down. Well, yeah, sure. If I give enough money out of pocket, I can maybe drive that down. And maybe that's where the lease deal that was advertised was derived from. But I saw nothing on the website that gave any indication of that. So yeah, I guess suppose that if I put a big enough down payment down on the lease, I could maybe get that Ford F-150 down to the $149 a month. So be very careful when you're seeing these ads. Make sure you understand all of the fine print, understand what you're getting into. So now let's talk about some final tips as you're maybe making your decision to buy or lease a car. So number one is do your homework. You want to do lots of research. Again, my philosophy on buying a car is to look for something that's maybe 2 or 3 years old. I like to buy vehicles that are in that maybe low 30,000 mile range in terms of the overall mileage, and I like to look for cars that have some type of a warranty extension or factory certification with a warranty. So I've done this twice now on my last 2 vehicle purchases. One that gave me a unlimited warranty up to 100,000 miles. I bought the car with about 32,000 miles on it, so that was for 5 years, up to 100,000 miles, whichever one came first. The car I bought most recently has an unlimited mileage for the next 2 years, and so both of those kind of give you an opportunity to drive the car for a while, and if anything was maybe deferred maintenance or anything on the car, hopefully you'll figure that out, be able to take the car into the dealership and get those things sorted out. So that's my basic philosophy, and you can do lots of research before you even leave your house right now. So you can check out individual dealerships' websites. You can go to things like Car Gurus or Auto Trader. You can look at what the going rates are for these cars. And the other thing too is to shop around dealerships. That's going to be a really big one. So you might be looking at pretty much the exact same car or truck and calling up one dealership. They give you a price or give you a lease deal, and it might be completely different than another one. I've seen this vary, by sometimes as much as 30 or 40 or 50% from one dealership to another. Kind of just depends on what's on the lot and what they what kind of deals or promotions they're running for that particular month. The other thing along those same lines is don't limit yourself just to the geographic area that you live in. So we're here in the Metro Detroit market, and so the way these car dealerships are set up is they'll have different dealer networks, say even for Chrysler or for GM or for Ford. So maybe by calling a Lansing dealership, which is maybe just an hour from where we're at here, they might have a completely different set of lease deals there in the Lansing market or the Flint market or Toledo. So we really have, let's say, 4 markets that are within an an hour drive of us. And if it means that I can save, let's say $100 a month on a lease deal by, going down to Toledo to pick up a car versus buying it here down the street in Michigan, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take advantage of that. So you want to look at that and be aware that there's going to be some big discrepancies there potentially. Also, too, you might want to look at your bank or credit union. So don't just assume that the financing that your car dealership is offering you is the best rate. Maybe you even want to prepare yourself in advance with that by calling up. And credit unions, I think, tend to be a little bit better in a lot of cases than banks, in my opinion. But you want to call them up and say, hey, what kind of deal could you get me on a car loan? If it's a used car or a new car, make sure you specify that. But find that rate out, and then when you're going in negotiating with the car dealership, then you kind of know where you stand on that. And again, make sure you understand the deal that you're looking at. Again, read that fine print, make sure you understand. And like George Costanza says, be prepared to walk away. So if it's not the deal that you planned on, just walk out. There's definitely another car that you can go get your hands on, and don't sign on that dotted line unless you're 100% certain about that. So anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you got some good information out of the video here today. Remember, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that like or subscribe button, and I'll see you back here in one of my next videos. Have a great day.